a unique weapon known as a boomerang. Failed to kill, the boomerang returned to the thrower. We bring you a modern motor car counterpart, the 9,600-mile around Australia reliability trial. It took them from Sydney, the largest city in Australia, South Wales, population 2 million, to the desolate outback, and back to the metropolis, but thereby hangs our toe. First, let us briefly examine this huge continent called Australia. It's almost exactly the same size as the United States, but there are only 7 Australians for every 100 Americans. Over half of Australia's 8 million population live in the 6 capital cities, the others in the rest of the 3 million square miles. It is a strange but inviting land of contrast. In those cities, a nation of sun worshippers can find 1,000 attractions. For its size and age, the industrial progress merits praise. Because of its geographical position, the increasing need for independence is obvious. But its prosperity is still based on wool, to a lesser extent cattle, wheat, and fruit, the products of its soil. Yes, where the rainfall is regular, there's abundant fertility. The climate and soil of the coastal area has no peer anywhere in the world. In fact, the beauty to be found where water is abundant is often breathtaking. The green belt of Australia comprises 1/3 of its total area. As the story we're to tell deals largely with the other 2/3, please remember what you've seen and don't judge Australia by its dust. In 1953, Australians were startled by the announcement of the first Redex trial. 186 cars hurtled their way over 6,500 miles on a boomerang course from Sydney to Sydney. It created fantastic interest and injected a tremendous stimulant into the motor trade of Australia. The progressive, expanding Roots organisation were proud of the part played by the Humber Super Snipe in that trial. Just redesigned from bumper to bumper, it had won the big car class and come second in the overall results. Complete justification of its claim to be built for the roads of the world. No greater endorsement of their own pride could be found than the choice of a Humber Super Snipe to carry the 1954 Redex trial organizer Norman Pleasance on his survey of the proposed route. Mr. Pleasance took the Snipe 2 months ahead of the trial competitors, at the tail end of the wet season, at a time when grasshoppers constitute a menace that trial drivers would not have to face. At certain times of the year, you just can't get round Australia. It's never an easy journey, but it was to prove really tough. Only 8 weeks later, the hazards were of a completely different nature. There was no water at all, and inches of powder-fine dust. Norm Pleasance claimed that not many motor cars would have brought him through some of the places he took the Humber. But as you can see for yourself, it finally got too bad altogether. Time and time again, a detour had to be made because the road was completely impassable. By the time this spot was reached, remember it, near Halls Creek after Catherine, local and police advice suggested that carrying on was impossible. The Fitzroy River, normally less than a quarter of a mile wide and usually without any water, was reputedly now 7 miles wide. Tony Mann and Norm Pleasance took 14 hours to dig their way out of here, and they then decided on a 4,000-mile detour, down through Alice Springs, over the Nullarbor Plain, and up as far as Derby. The trip ultimately took 9 instead of 5 weeks, and by the time they returned to Sydney, the total mileage was 14,200, a tribute to all concerned with the journey. It was a fantastic report to the Sporting Car Club conference, but faint hearts are useless in this game. The trial was on, 9,600 miles. Furthermore, the route was substantially as anticipated, despite screams from some quarters. They said it was too long, too dangerous, medical aid too often too far away, no communications, unfair on the local residents, it would disrupt the flying doctor service, and so on. No answer was the stern reply. Cars would follow the same route as in 1953 to Darwin, then west over virtual desert through Halls Creek to Derby and Broome. Thence inland, because of expected rain, to Meekatharra, and on to Perth, more than 6,000 miles so far. Out over the Nullarbor Plain, another virtual desert, through Eucla, across the top of Spencer Gulf to Adelaide, Melbourne, and back to Sydney. Definitely the longest, toughest car trial ever. The routes organization knew none better what was at stake. The Snipe was built for the job. It was really a wonderful opportunity to show the public how good their vehicle was. Crews were chosen carefully and briefed with the importance of the undertaking. The tocsin was sounded. Literally hundreds of drivers, taking no notice of wet blanket warnings, announced their intention of being in it. By this time it cost £40 to enter, but 262 enthusiasts had sent in their check. Not all experienced trial or racing drivers, mainly enthusiasts giving it a go for the first time. The Women's Weekly is a magazine with the largest circulation of its kind in Australia. They decided to send an all-woman crew and chose a Humber Super Snipe as the most likely to get them round. The official Humber vehicles to be used were taken at random from the Australian production line, 3 blacks and 3 creams. The blacks were to form a Victorian team entry under Captains Tony Peck, Russell Lane and Gil Gilbert. The 3 cream cars representing New South Wales were to be captained by famous drivers Tom Solomon, Bill Nunn and Nat Buchanan. 3 men whose knowledge and experience were a byword in Australia. For a fortnight, the Australian Sporting Car Club conducted a minute inspection to ensure that every entry was an authentic stock model. All parts were sprayed with a special luminous paint. Ultraviolet ray inspection would detect replacement. Despite that apparent levity, the stage had been reached where the atmosphere was tense, nerve-wracking, keen. From Root's point of view, the numerical opposition was tough. 58 Holdens, 41 Fords, 26 standard products, and 32 Peugeots, the tough little French car which took out the 1953 trial. Whereas the confidence and reputation of the Roots organization was placed in a total of 9 Humber Super Snipes, 7 official and 2 private entries. A meeting of drivers was called the night before the trial began. They were reminded of road safety obligations, that it was a reliability trial, not a race. Secret controls were explained. Came the day, Saturday, July 3rd. I'll hand over to Roots on-the-spot reporter John Mellion.
Thank you. Well, all publicity was focused on the start. Press reps were going. Radio was on the spot interviewing favorite drivers. Roots executives shake hands with Tommy Solomon and crew. First snipe up, number 31. Goodbye and good luck. Starting at noon and every 2 minutes thereafter, the cars left Sydney Showground over the next 8 hours and 40 minutes. 6,000 came to see the start. An estimated 200,000 lined the exit route from Sydney City. Bill Nunn was the second Humber away, number 57. Of the 262 who entered, 16 forfeited their entry fees. and 246 were actually flagged out. The third Snipe is the first of the two private entries, number 68 driven by John Hay of Victoria. Yet to be proved, but a little humor goes a long way. Jack Davy, number 1 radio star, once again a contestant. There's little point in stopping here. Over to Sydney Bridge, where the toll for every car had been prepaid by an interested advertiser. As a matter of fact, most competitors sold advertising space at approximately £50 per door. Control officials and press took off from Bankstown Aerodrome at 3 p.m. in the official Lockheed. Redex General Manager Red Shepherd is left behind to hold the fort. Sunset over Railway Square, Sydney. The cars are still pouring out of the showground. The run to Brisbane wasn't tough, nearly 700 at only 28 miles per hour on bitumen most of the way. Morning finds us at the twin border towns Coolangatta and Tweed Heads. Two secret controls that added to the irritating tactics of the Sydney mastermind. Brisbane, progressive capital of Queensland, city of the 7 hills, population nearly 250,000. At the control point, special police are needed. Kim Burge arrives, a New Zealand entry, 11:38 a.m. The crowd is enthusiastic, even if the weather is variable. Tommy Solomon, right on time. He nearly won it last year, again one of the favorites. Granny Conway is in the trial again, driving last year's Presentation Austin. Bill Nunn's daughter is one of the Women's Weekly crew. Neither lost points here. That goes for all the Humbers, although 39 entrants lost points at the two secret controls. Brisbane was a 12-hour stop, and the first car due out again just before midnight. Now for the 1,000-mile run to Townsville with a half-day stop at Rockhampton. Don't overlook in any part of the journey that half the trial was driven during night hours. Dawn finds us off the bitumen at 37.5. Yes, we're through Maryborough and approaching the rum town of Bundaberg. Sydney radio stations are travelling with the cars. Announcers interview drivers at all checkpoints. The rain is easing off as Tom Solomon pulls out, still with a clean sheet. Next leg, 211 miles at 32 miles per hour. Last year they shot through this sugar country to build up a time advantage. This year they can't. There's the ever-present fear of secret controls. The navigator's eye is glued on the clock as much as the map. It didn't pay to mistrust your mathematics. You can sense the speed increasing as we watch Sydney sider Bob Sears flat out after cattle buyer Kelly. The long shadows flicker on Dodge entry number 202 as we pass from the temperate to the torrid zone. We'll pass back again on the other side of Australia. 10 p.m. in Rockhampton Showground. 93 cars are in the red, but no Humbers, no secret controls. One thing about filming a Redex trial, unfortunately you can't stop to look around. We're now 200 miles further on. It's just after dawn and a quiet, eerie atmosphere as we sit in behind Tommy Solomon. This is a 250-mile leg to Mackay at 31 miles per hour average. Drivers are wary as animal life is prolific here. There's Nat Buchanan patiently sitting on that low-speed average, enough to make you hopping mad. The black Super Snipe is number 213, Russell Lane and crew, dead on time and taking it well. This is our first sign of what was to be the biggest hazard of all, dust, a real menace when the average means slow competitors ahead. Out of the bush and into circulation again, approaching Mackay. Nearly 1,400 miles from home, Mackay is the main center of a sugar, dairying, banana and gold area. But for us, only a 2-minute checking point. Number 95 seen here carries 4 locals and the good wishes of every resident. Right underway again, 9 hours driving at 30 miles an hour in front of us. Easy, fellas, it takes him 5 minutes to get across the road. He's an anteater, not an antelope. Holden 129, Peter Benson, dentist, passing real trouble a bit early in the trial. This fellow's well ahead of time. He must be. We're doing the overtaking. Things are beginning to move again. The winding country makes 30 miles an hour quite tough. Watch this, Ken Tubman's last year's winner. He gives his rear end a mighty thump on the other side. That bump was to prove very costly later. John Belling and a Zephyr with 2 other South Australian car dealers, no points lost. What a pet this koala would make at home. But he has to have the right kind of gum leaf, so I'm afraid we'll have to leave this bear behind. Whilst not tough, this winding country finds weak spots in the chassis assembly, conditions the cars for the country ahead. Proserpine is the town, and we're nearing the end of the run north and the end of the 3rd day. By the time Townsville was reached, more than half had made a mistake in less than 20% of the journey. But the 2 Humber teams were both in the clear, and so were the girls. 240 cars make an impressive sight in the red dawn at Townsville Control. This is not a time for repairs or maintenance, as while booked-in cars may not be touched. They're beginning to show signs of the strife they've come through. So are the crews. To keep fit sleep is imperative. Waking up, a problem. Washing facilities are primitive unless you bring them with you. Frank Kleinig carries a spare water tank and tap on the radiator. Let's have a look at Townsville, the 2nd biggest port in Queensland. Population 35,000. A rich dairying area with both minerals and sugar to help. An excellent climate, an assured future. But we must away, starting with the daylight cars head out west. A 3,000-mile journey to the other side of the continent. The first leg, the Calamity Trail to Mount Isa. Go to it, fellas. They all knew about it and dreaded it. Don't be misled by this section. The troubles are sudden and vicious. That's Possum Kipling in the middle, building up time. This is a sudden typical dilemma. Can you afford to give... Well, what do you know, a scrub turkey. Battened down, we're in the bull dust, some of it 3 feet deep. Suspension and shock absorbers really take a belting. Drivers can't get a clue what's under that dust. This Humber went round last year. Nat Buchanan then, John Welsh this time. "600 miles of this, and the worst is at the end. Dust and mud. Could there be a worse combination? Trying to conserve the car makes an average of 33 miles per hour really tough going. With no points lost, the 3 girls are holding their place. In the trial, if not in the car. Now what have we got? Local families come down to watch certain trouble. Dad's done nothing but work, but the kids will talk about it for weeks. Ken Orman jumps on the bumper bar to get more weight on the tires. Seems to work. Russell Lane at the wheel, Humber 213. It came through much worse in the survey and takes this in its stride. Night time and the locals guide cars through a bad detour. That's Gil Gilbert right up on time. Cloncurry checkpoint, 83 miles to Mount Isa. And here's a pretty problem. The first 20 miles are on good gravel, the rest horrible. Would there be a secret control at the end of that first stretch? Should they give it a go? Down in Sydney, the Australian Sporting Car Club renders a 24-hour service. Constant telegrams keep them up to date. News so far indicates that cars and men are turning on too good a performance. Confirmation indicated action. All right, it's got to be done. Turn it on, the diabolical secret control. No other phrase would describe it. It was virtually in order to slaughter the field. Sad to relate, one of the first to be caught in the early dawn was Tommy Sullivan in Super Snipe number 31. He lost 22 points for going too fast. He takes it good-naturedly, but the air was blue in no time. Watch Tom Farrell's co-driver, Jack Jones. His reaction is typical of over 100 crews. 25 black marks in his case. This was the scene as we came over the hill. Pandemonium. All drivers knew they had no one to blame but themselves. They took a gamble and fell for a trap. All Humbers, every one of them, lost points. Only 3 cars didn't. Now all cars had to face 27 miles per hour on a horror stretch in the middle of the trial. Away goes John Hay, minus 50 points, determined to lose no more. Jack Davy right in his tail. They call this the Devil's Highway. 3 cars turned over, 2 hit tree stumps, several bogged. 6 cars broke down, engines clogged with sand. It's okay if you don't lose your sense of humor. Jack Davy gave it a go and cracked the jackpot. He's in dire trouble. And so's this chap. He's had it all together and sent into Mount Isa for a tow. Note the car doing the towing, a Humber Super Snipe, if you please. It's an ill wind that blows nobody any good. Let's drive with them, and remember they have to average 27 miles per hour. What have we got? Tommy Selman on time, clear stretch, flat to the boards. At least as much as you can be here. 1 minute you give it a gun and the next you're picking your way gently through rocky outcrops. It's a clever driver with a good car who loses no points on this run. It's indescribably rugged, winding and vicious, but it's nearly over and we've all had enough of it. Those 12 hours in Mount Isa begin to look awful good. Boy, Mount Isa. In the middle of nowhere but a haven for weary drivers and a boom town of the future. Normally rich in minerals, they've now found uranium. They're set for the atomic age. Down in control, Russell Lane and Don Boynton drown their disappointment in a cup of tea. What a change since Townsville. Reaction varies, but mostly the air hums with post-mortems. Tommy Sullivan didn't lose another point, a really good effort, but 3 cars still have a clean sheet. The next leg to Darwin, perhaps the easiest of all, but one with its own kind of challenge. After checking out, cars race to local garages for petrol and oil. "1,100 miles to Darwin. 25 hours continuous driving at 40 miles per hour on a road as straight as an arrow. Fighting the tendency to sleep was the problem. Dawn at Renner Springs, about half the journey covered. Secret controls allowed drivers a 6-minute margin in every hour. They built up to the point where they had 30 minutes up their sleeve, then did overhaul work at the side of the road. The long run was taking its toll. 8 cars telegraphed Darwin announcing withdrawal. One of them was last year's winner, Ken Tobman. One of the 3 clean skins, Martin Arendt's Ford, lost 47 points on this run north. Every Humber stood up to the punishment. Darwin provided a bed for every competitor. No mean achievement for a population of only 7,000. Three hours before dawn, they were away again, but our cameraman was still flaked out. Not for long, in front of them, the desert. All cars were examined here to see that they carried the emergency equipment: food, water, tow rope, de-ditching gear, and first aid kit. The atmosphere is tense again. Weird anthills warn of isolation ahead. Russell Lane only 32 points in the red. Gil, but still very much in it. Don't think that gas mask is unnecessary. You'll appreciate the reason very shortly. Ahead is 1,100 miles to the Indian Ocean, to Broome. Several station homesteads have been declared out of bounds. We're on our own. Zephyr number 194 from Victoria streaks over that open stretch, chased by John Welsh and crew. This powdered bull dust is as fine as talcum. The wheels slip and slither. Inside, it's a murky hothouse. The forward speed of the car creates a vortex at the back, and the powder dust is sucked inwards. It creates the worst hazard of the lot. Pounding up behind another vehicle, visibility decreases to nil. If you don't get past it once, you either fall back or take a chance. Doug Whiteford took it. A sudden emergency caused a smash, and Jack Murray was left out in front, the only man still in the clear. Nat Buchanan, 227, holding the road well. These glimpses of action typify the dogged determination of the men at the wheel. They know it's going to be tough to average 30 in this country. They know that any second there's that lurking tree stump, buried pothole, sudden creek bed that could leave them out here for days. So what? Their cars are in good nick and they can't win by being too cautious. Any necessity to stop puts your heart in your mouth. Others roar past unless you signal. Press on regardless. 14 hours out from Darwin and we've got 12 hours of night driving ahead. Bad enough when the sun's up. Just another hazard, but it could be grim. A kangaroo trying to get away from the mesmerizing headlights. Dawn. This flat, rather depressing outlook marks our passage from the Northern Territory into Western Australia. An opportunity to pick up lost time. Bill Lee, Parramatta news agent, is flat out. He claimed 103 miles an hour. A new type of anthill marks our approach to the Kimberleys, a range of small mountains spreading for miles. Certainly the scenery has changed. Here's a grand impression of this area as a consul races towards Halls Creek. Watch him float as he passes under camera. A good impression of the depth of the dust. Remember, only 2 months before, the survey Humber turned round here because of mud. Halls Creek, outpost of civilization and a refueling spot. Time out for praise. These drums were placed here by 2 oil companies as a special service for the trial. We've broken the back of this hazardous trail, but the new type rocky sections stress the necessity to keep eyes peeled for sharp edges. The cameraman has company, it seems. So it goes on, hour after hour of tension and strain, trying to sleep as tired shock absorbers and suspension gear take the monotony of continuous pounding. Darwin to Broome, across the desert to Halls Creek, 2 days and 2 nights. At the end of the second, through pitch black darkness to Derby, refuel, and out with the dawn. A total of 38 cars were knocked out on this trail to Broome. Note the tow line as we pass car number 9. It's that ill wind again. Once more a Humber taxi to the rescue. This is the 9th day from Sydney and a beautiful 24-hour spell coming up. Boy, we can do with it. You'll remember that 246 cars left Sydney. They've dwindled to 167 by the time this spot was reached. With an average of 3 per car, that's still 500 men to feed, and the volunteer effort by the Country Women's Association was never more welcome. Tired, red-eyed, bearded, grimy, they light up and then make a beeline for the canteen. This driver, typical of so many, tries to get rid of that indescribable bull dust. While they sleep, let us have a look at Broome, fabulous town of Australian story. It's really a headquarters port for the pearling luggers and has one of the biggest tides in the world, 28 feet. Because of the main occupation, the population of about 700 has a strong Oriental strain. There's ample evidence of this back at the control point where the parked cars attract local curiosity. The shattering impact of so many cars evokes an innocent but intense interest. To them, the dust means nothing. These are modern, sleek new models, the last word in comfort, and covered with desirable gadgets. Needs must when the devil drives, away south to Perth. At the wheel of Humber 181 is Battle of Britain fighter pilot Gilbert. Here's the reason Jack Murray carried a stick of gelignite, a no passing track. He could blast a way round if necessary. No place for a galah. An oil survey party doesn't make it any easier. Well marked on the map, but with a population less than 20, is La Grange. The cars roar through non-stop. I wonder what he thinks of it all. This is the beginning of the 80-mile beach, and ahead is a treacherous area known as Pardue Sands. We've got to average 30 miles per hour, so speed is essential where it's possible. The peaceful existence of local livestock is shattered. Wild horses known as brumbies in Australia haven't learned to regard a road as a danger area. We're about a mile from and following the coast. Buccaneer Bill Dampier, first man to set foot here, called it God's miserablest country. He might be right. Yes, this is it, the beginning of the dreaded Pardue Sands. Grip that wheel and give up any idea of sleep. Come inside our car to get an impression of the discomfort and visualize what's going on underneath. Watch those wheels. This thing goes on for endless miles. Gilbert again, well up on time and holding the track well. The Indian Ocean. The closest drivers get to it. There is a natural desire to go over and have a look, but they daren't stop. Once through the Pardue Sands, and it was a pretty good run into Port Hedland. A 2-minute checkpoint, down across that Tropic of Capricorn again, and into Meekatharra. We struck trouble and came here after the cars. This is Meekatharra back to normal since the mad rush went through. Note again the Humber taxi. Speaking of trouble, let's go back and look at a few. This oil slick tells its own message. Morris Minor 218 out of action with hold sump and hundreds of miles from help. Lee's Hudson finally struck trouble. A broken steering arm pin, but he got back in the trial. Holden number 198 hit a drum of sand outside Derby. Peugeot number 16 is really in bother, an engine clogged with sand. You've overcome disappointment when you settle down to do a valve grind at the side of the road. The silence must have been golden to allow this cheeky inspection. Jack Brabham looks lonely. A boulder smashed suspension and pushed back his radiator. This gate needed a wooden stump to hold it back. Jack Ballharker's Peugeot actually put it there 2 years ago. Only one man in the trial hit it, Jack Bourne. This bloke seems to have lost his rear suspension. Hello, Max Simpson from Darlinghurst springs into the limelight. This is staying in the trial the hard way. And they call mules stubborn. Well, our trouble's nearly fixed. We'll catch up with camera unit number 2. They say an emu can do 60. We're touching 45 and have a chance to study them in action. Back in the trial again. John Hay going remarkably well. Heavier rain would have caused real trouble. It's 2,500 miles since the last strip of bitumen. The relief to get on it can be imagined. But sinister Norman Pleasance has been on the job again. Boys is a tribute to them and the car. Off the rough stuff near Perth Control, then 1,700 miles to Adelaide. New tyres needed, can't do it in Control, do it now. The boys were given a wonderful welcome at Perth, the lovely garden city capital of Western Australia. But it's a trial, not a tour. Besides, Humber drivers Solomon, Lane, Peck and Gilbert have each lost less than 50 points. They are very much in it. Australia watches Murray. He's still the P, but if he does lose points, there are at least 20 right in his tail. Eastward ho to Kalgoorlie, the richest square mile on earth. A workable, almost unlimited supply of gold lies underneath. Water for 12,000 people come from 300 miles by pipeline from Perth. But even so, our pot of gold is back in Sydney. And there's the Nullarbor plain to cross. Another 1,000 miles of virtual desert before we get back into civilization. Halfway over is a spot called Eucla, and a bed, tea, beer and petrol are available. It used to be the overland cable station, but the sand walked in. The PMG men walked out, 20 miles north, when the overland railway line was put through. But they left behind their imprint in the sands of time. Those windscreen wipers are news out here. It rains once in 3 years or so. But it was only a few spots, no real value and no trouble for the Redex men. Believe it or not, this marks the border but not the official plaque. That's near the railway line 20 miles north. You have to stand here to appreciate the loneliness. Back on the job and tragedy looms ahead. Citroen number 246 Arthur Shea was doing 55 along here when it caught fire. As the crew left out, the emergency tank exploded. Shea lost everything, including £100 in notes. If there were no Redex trial when this happened, they might have faced a 50-mile walk for help. As it was, Jack Murray picked them up and brought them into Adelaide. Racing away from the setting sun provides a scene of beauty as the 14th day comes to a close. It's a fascinating dawn as the sun sits on the rim of the world. The end of that long run from the Golden West, suddenly again we burst into a green Australia. After so much dust, the impact of rain is incredible. Not that it rains all the time in Adelaide, the peaceful South Australian capital. Certainly it doesn't dampen the enthusiastic reception from a crowd who followed every move. Fred Claridge, 135, is temporarily home. But a seething mob with autograph books don't care where you came from. John Hay, with time up his sleeve, waits for direction. Possum Kipling, another South Australian, says hello to his youngster. Only about half the field left for this murky departure for the 500-mile run into Victoria and Melbourne. It's not a tough journey on an excellent highway. Other cars' chances of winning clearly depended on Jack Murray. Still, he'd lost no points. Could he last distance? 600 miles to go. The mist and fog hang low as they arrive in Melbourne. Again, the army barracks was the control point. And again, the exit run from there was secret. After checking in, they were told the Australian Alps, where snow often makes the road impassable, where the point score could be changed considerably. Query, should special tyres be fitted, would change be necessary? All the way through it was a battle of nerves. Secret controls had played havoc, but so many were still within striking distance that a win for Jack Murray could not by any means be taken for granted. At 9:32 p.m. the last leg began. Lieutenant General Sir Horace Robertson was the official starter as the closed-up field pulled out. All through the night the cars would be climbing, up to Karrier, the coldest spot in Australia. But not to a blanket of snow. Rain had fallen. There was no real trouble. Had there been, things might have been different. But there's no point in speculating. Only 200 miles to go. As these Humber rocket their weary drivers towards Sydney, let's pause and re-examine the magnitude of this trial. The estimated circumference of the world at the equator is 25,000 miles. 130 cars have each done more than one-third of that journey. 9,600 miles in 17 days, an average of 560 daily. These 39 countries inset in the coastline of Australia should bring home the extent of the tribute to man and machine. "10,000 people at Sydney Showground, 6 p.m. and for the first... Fittingly, the first Humber in is the one that went round last year too. Jack Welch in 173. Not on the prize list, but very well. Boots managing director and other executives are at the finish to welcome drivers and crew. Once again, the Humber Super Snipe, built for the roads of the world, had proved its reliability on the roads of Australia. First, third and fourth in the big car class in 53, second and fourth in 54. 5 of the first 9 placings in that class in 53, 6 of the first 12 in 54. Tommy Sulman was not only second in the big car class, but 5th in the open event. His only fault being too fast between Cloncarie and that secret control. But Roots unhesitatingly paid tribute to Unseen Anderson Holden third, Bill Patterson and his Peugeot who was second, and we joined the huge crowd in acclaiming the winners, the Miracle Murrays in their Ford. Both with the same surname, but they were not related. Last year they were in a Plymouth which turned over on the run to Mount Isa. If that tarnished a fine reputation, it's now thoroughly redeemed. Their winners are national fame. Hearty congratulations to both. And now I'll hand you back to Peter Whitchurch.
Thank you, John. Naturally, all results were provisional, pending inspection of prize winners by the Sporting Car Club. The black Humbers are here. All parts are examined to see that they've not been changed. Engines are dismantled and the bore and stroke checked. Let us see how the Humber stood up to it all. Naturally, the shock absorbers of any car take the biggest pounding. As you can see, these are still in perfect condition. Road holding ability prevented skids. The bodywork is still as admired in Broome. Despite the strain, all doors closed properly. The ground clearance at the back indicates how well the suspension stood up to its task. Further proof of this is seen in the condition of the overriders on the bumper bars. All right, Operation Boomerang has come to its end. The shouting and the tumult dies down. Just what has been achieved? To provide reliability for Australian conditions requires adequate research. Roots Australia Limited feel that the lesson learnt from the 2 trials held proves quite conclusively that the British Humber Super Snipe assembled in Australia is a car of which they and you can be justifiably proud.